Hi, my name is Max. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Assaia International. We're a Zurich-based startup, and we teach computers to understand the world like we humans do. In order to achieve this, we use the latest developments in neural networks, colloquially referred to as artificial intelligence or AI. In the next couple of minutes, I'd like to present to you how we apply our AI technology in the Assaia turnaround AI and leverage it for the benefit of many parties in the aviation industry. Google, Amazon, and Facebook have created enormous value over the last 20 years. Actually, they went from $0 to $1.5 trillion, more or less, in 20 years. They have done this based on their mastery of structured and unstructured data. They are the best in the world when it comes to extracting structured and unstructured data from their users and leveraging it to a great economic advantage for them. Now, if you look at data availability in general at your airport, what you will see is that a lot of developments have happened on the land side. For example, you can now track passengers with the latest beacon and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth monitoring technologies very closely, and you most likely have improved your retail positioning and your architecture a lot already. However, when it comes to the air side, specifically to turnarounds, it turns out that the turnaround visibility is, with many airports, very limited. Now, you would say, maybe, I don't really care about this because I lease out our stands anyway to our airline. So what do I care how efficient they perform their turnarounds? Actually, the turnarounds have a significant impact on your overall performance as an airport and operations. So to give you one example, you see that over the last decades, there has been a very dynamic development in the number of passengers per year that are traveling through the air. At the same time, this dynamic development hits a very static infrastructure because you're only building a new terminal or a new airport every 10 or 20 years. This means that to cope with this very dynamic development of passengers, you have to increase the efficiency on the same static infrastructure. That's the only way out in cases of an over-demand on the passenger side or an undercapacity on the airport side, like here. You see that there's more passengers than there's actually infrastructure. So if you have data availability and if you can increase the efficiency on your churns, this will allow you to increase the overall efficiency that you have on your infrastructure. And this allows you to positively influence the KPIs, revenue, and passenger happiness. The second aspect is that up to 20% of all delays are turn related. This means that the OTP and the passenger happiness are severely impacted based on the turnaround process. And if you want to start now optimizing this process, you will find out very quickly that there's only a very limited data availability about this process. So there's actually no systematic this process isn't available for process mining, and there's not really a systematic possibility to optimize the turnaround process. The second aspect is revenue capturing and also tapping into new revenue streams. Revenue capturing is sometimes done in a very archaic manner these days. So for example, if you want to monitor a parking area that you have and you want to make sure that you actually capture each and every airplane that goes in and out of this parking area, we've heard from some of our airports before they use the Assaia technology that they actually have someone sitting and watching CCTV streams to make sure that they capture all of the parkings that are happening. On the other side, the introductory example that I gave you about Facebook, Amazon, and Google ruling the world, they have achieved their position based on the data availability that they have, the insights into their customers or the users they have. So data seems to be very valuable. And as we will see later on, there is parties in the aviation industry that are actually willing to pay for high resolution and reliable data. on the turnaround process, for example. And these both aspects are driving your KPI overall revenue top line. The fourth aspect really is efficiency, both at the ramp. So we already mentioned the more efficient a turnaround is, the faster it will go, and the more turns you can actually have per gate. And thus, this increases the overall capacity your airport has. The other aspect is that, for example, for billing unleased stands, you will have someone in the back office that's actually collecting the data for each of these stands, and they actually try to write bills and invoices for every process that has happened there, for every occupancy that has happened there. And that's something that's a very manual process these days. So often these people are confronted with handwritten notes or unstructured data or data that comes from many different sources. So again, just remember the guy watching CCTV. That's the kind of process level that we currently see with some of the airports out there. And both these efficiencies, they can actually drive your KPIs margin and profit. And last but not least, you read a lot about a smart airport, airport 4.0, and so on and so forth. There's really a vision that the industry has about the role of an airport in the future. And that's really that the airport is no longer just the concrete field where planes take down and get down and take off. If you look at it from a data availability perspective, and if you look at the value chain and the positioning that the airports should have in this value chain, it's really that they should become the entity that ensures an efficient collaboration of the stakeholders and operational excellence. So if you look at other infrastructure providers such as stock exchanges, that's most likely the path of development that at least some in the aviation industry see happening. And as soon as the airports have taken this role, this will allow for more efficient operations from all the stakeholders, such as handlers, such as carriers, and other suppliers, because they can rely on integrated information. They can use real-time data to do real-time decision-making and coordination, and they have situational awareness. For example, where do we stand in a certain turnaround, and should we do intervention activities for a turn? And finding this role can actually drive your KPIs, customer satisfaction, and innovativeness. Customers in these cases would be the airlines and the handlers. So what are we really doing? What is Assaia doing in this big puzzle, in this big context? Well, as I mentioned, we're an AI startup, and we are using ramp video feeds to understand every turnaround and prevent accidents. What we basically do is we take these video feeds, for example, from CCTV cameras that are already installed at the ramp. We put them through our artificial intelligence, which you can see here. And this artificial intelligence essentially converts the unstructured video data that we get from the ramp into structured data that is then readily and almost in real time available in spreadsheet applications, in your existing gate management systems, or in the existing AODB. It can be used for real-time push notifications, and it can be immediately shared with your partners because it has an underlying permission structure. So this, for example, makes sure that data for a, let's say, United turn is only available to United Airlines plus the handlers that are actually working on turning this plane around. On a more tangible level, what do we actually get out of this process? Well, we get out automated timestamps. So for every event that's happening at the ramp during a turnaround, we get proper timestamps. They are automatic, they are reliable, and they are objective. So our system can also serve as a single source of truth. We use these timestamps as a predictor and feed them into our machine learning algorithm. This machine learning algorithm gives very accurate predictions about when the plane will be ready for pushback. This allows carriers and handlers to observe the turn, and as soon as the estimated off-block time or ready for pushback time increases, they can put additional resources on the turn to make sure it leaves the stand in time. In addition, ATC or ground control has a much better idea on how to sequence aircraft at the runway. And under the bottom line, this decreases the slot wastage because runway and stand slots can be used more efficiently. And last but not least, we're also preventing accidents. We taught the computer to understand what a dangerous situation is. So, for example, equipment that's in the equipment restricted zone, a jet bridge that hasn't been retracted properly before airplane arrival, or workers not wearing a safety vest. In these cases and other similar cases, a real-time warning can be triggered, and thus accidents can actually be prevented before they happen. To give you a quick idea of how this actually looks, let's have a short demo. You can see here in the top left corner of my screen an turnaround that is being carried out on this Air New Zealand plane. And you can see that as individual events are happening, such as individual containers being unloaded or fueling being connected, we are generating accurate timestamps automatically off of this footage. These timestamps can be displayed in a Gantt chart, as you can see here to the right. And they can obviously be readily used in existing systems that work with structured data, such as your spreadsheet application, but also your existing systems or smartphone apps. So this is all nice, but what can you actually do based on this data? Well, for example, you can, during a turn, enable real-time intervention. This means that if you see that a turn doesn't develop as planned against, for example, the SLA model that is underlying to this turn, either automated actions can be taken. For example, other suppliers can be pinged to ensure that they arrive as soon as possible, or if you're the handler, you can decide to staff additional employees if you see that, for example, there's way more bags in this plane than anticipated, to ensure that the turn will be carried out punctually and does not delay the plane. Another action is that looking at the data from a historic point of view, collecting all this data finally allows us to have an in-depth understanding of how every turn developed and find out whether there are any systematic reasons why certain turns do not go as planned. Based on this, the reasons for these delayed turns can be removed, and thus future turns can be increased in terms of their punctuality. From an airport point of view, you can, for example, automate the revenue capturing and billing. Since you now have this data about every turn available in a structured manner, you can actually use it in the back office to automatically generate invoices. And each one of the line items that you're actually writing down in this invoice is backed up by a single source of truth, including a visual recording of how the specific event happened and at which time. So again, if you're capacity constrained, the logic is that if you have more efficient turns, you can decrease the time required per turn. This means more turns per gate. This means a higher capacity on your static infrastructure, and this means a higher revenue for you. And this gain in efficiency really goes both ways. So if you imagine that you only shave off 5 minutes of a 60 minutes turn, that's an 8% increase in turns for an airport. Or for an airline, that means on average annually 60 additional flights Atlanta to JFK purely on marginal cost. So this is a huge capacity increase for both of the parties. And we see that the market really wants to have this data. So carriers wanted to actually optimize their processes. This is one example of a message that we got from a major carrier that actually wants to use the data to understand how they can optimize their ground processes. And we also see that ground handlers love this tool because it allows them to have higher service, higher levels of service, better definite SLAs, and also, for example, introduce bonus schemes for their SLAs for good work or for making good on a delay that their carrier actually had triggered by having their plane arriving late. And obviously, there's a lot of more. So if you have a better OTP, this translates into a better passenger experience and happiness. You can automate reporting, both in terms of business data as well as compliance data. For example, every safety related event that is happening on the Apron is automatically recorded, flagged, and can be used, and this data can be used to automatically generate reports. As I mentioned, you can introduce new revenue streams into your business model, because from a data provider perspective, you can finally be this enabler in the overall aviation ecosystem and provide this new data that you generate with your infrastructure and our software to carriers, to handlers, and other suppliers. And this means overall, as a result, you are the enabler in this ecosystem. At any point in time, you can find our demo on the web and understand yourself how our system works. And that's it. If you want to get in touch, I'd be very happy if you would reach out to us. We've already lined up many airports in Europe, Middle East, Asia, and the US, and we'd be very happy to talk with you about how we could do something for you. Thank you.